Welcome to a new video in my channel, and as you can see the the big 7.25-inch loco is in my garage now because I want to do some additional work on it, and it's just easier to work on it here than trying to kneel in the grass in the garden. So after the first open day I moved it back here in the garage and not putting back into the layout for that reason. But I also wanted to just release all the different footage that I have taken over the past couple of years, well, not years, sorry, months, where I was working on this, because for this summer I wanted to get this loco up and running with some additional details that you can probably see in this picture. Well, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but maybe you would be able to see some additional 3D printed details like a vehicle number and some additional vents and like filler caps for the sanding. So there are some vents here just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I also in the beginning, on the front I have added brake levers, not brake levers, brake hoses, and I have windows now, I have door handles, and the doors are now open. I have windows here as well. I have windows, I don't have windows here because this is where the controller usually comes out with the cable, but I have windows here, and also there are cab details. So in this video I'm going to talk about all of these. Well, I'm going to have some footage how I build them, and the first bigger part of the video is going to be the cab details, because what I had in mind, which I think I already mentioned in the previous video, that I was designing this kind of cab which would go into the sort of the cab area, and that would have all the details. So this was the plan, and I spent a lot of time designing this, and I spent a lot of time printing it. Eventually, at the end, I found out that it doesn't really fit. It doesn't really fit because obviously I did everything in 3D based on the original drawings, and you know, the welding did not exactly turn out the way it is, and I left no tolerance at all in the design, which means that this doesn't actually fit into the cab because of all the various small things, like, you know, the weld beads are adding additional thickness, so it doesn't fit in here. I also have, like for example, these handrails, they have, you know, they protrude inside with a small amount of, you know, weld, how it's welded in place, and all these little things means that I just can't get this into the cab. It needs to be a couple of millimeters shorter, and also fixing it into the cab was also really difficult and something that I didn't think about. So in retrospect, I probably should have added some fixing points inside the upper chassis that I can mount this to, like, you know, some tabs and holes and screw holes, which I didn't do. So after spending all this time making this, which is, I mean, it's just, you know, just ply and gluing it all together, I ended up abandoning this idea. And what I did on the other cab, which is here, is that I've taken this and I cut this in half. Basically, I cut this like, sort of like here, and also I cut it like here. So I only keep this, sort of this back part, which is going to, well, which fits through the door, and that serves just the purpose to hide all the batteries and the internals. So why, you know, when I do this, so when I cut this top part and everything, it sort of like reaches up to this height. So unless you are looking at, you look into the cab from sort of like from this eye level, you would be able to see it doesn't reach all the way top. But if you look it from like as a normal standing person, you won't be able to see that it doesn't reach all the way to the front and all the way to the top. So I think it's going to be good enough. I still need to paint this to the sort of the engine green or the internal green color, but that's fine. The other thing which I wanted to add is all these cab details. So it's like a, you know, the driver cab, sort of the controller and screens and everything. And actually there is an internal rib here which keeps this the front section to the correct profile, and I was able to mount to this to the cab to that. So originally I was planning to put it in here, but at least I don't have to do that. So at least I managed to do that separately, and I can cut this in half and fit this through the door, and that's going to be just a separate piece. I haven't even mounted it, it just sort of like sits there, but fortunately it doesn't really rattle around. So it just serves the purpose of screening the sort of the internals which are happening here, the batteries and all the cables. So the only place to view those is through these small back windows, the side windows. And that's pretty much it. And I still haven't done the proper controller. So you can see some holes here. That's for the some connections for the controller that I still need to do. So I'm still using the old controller, and this is why there is no window here, because the cable comes through this window. And I've also created these pillars here, which I plan to add along the top of the loco. And I also have a piece of ply, which you can see here. So I want to cut very thin strips of this, and that's going to be like how it used to be in really old electric locomotives from sort of like the 30s and 40s, where they used to have like a walkway sort of thing here on the top. I guess that was for walkway for maintenance, I can only presume. So I wanted to add that just to make the top a little bit more interesting. So I have all these small pieces 3D printed already. I just need to cut them into small strips, and also, you know, like drill them through the roof, and then secure them, but that should be it. So yeah, a bunch of footage from sort of like from the beginning of the year all the way until now. So for some of them I have some explanatory commentary, but I think for some of them I'm just going to narrate through the footage that I have left from those days when I was working on these details. So enjoy. So today is a quite cold Saturday weekend, and my family is away, so I have loads of time for myself, and I thought it would be time to cut the cab design on my CNC. And then maybe, you know, whilst I'm monitoring it, maybe I should do some, you know, clean up in the garage, tidy up a little bit, and then put some of the stuff away that I'm not using anymore. So I think that's what I'm going to do today. I have these old blankets on the computer and the CNC, so just prevent a little bit of dust settling on them. So let's remove these. I'm going to put them here. And the computer itself is here. So let's get this up and running. Good old Windows 7. And this controller is running already. So I have a main switch, I have a separate switch for the spindle controller and the pump. But now it is running. And if I move, you can see the numbers moving. And she's alive as well. Okay, let's get the materials prepped. So I have a bunch of sheets here, and well, as you can see, mostly MDF, and then I have a couple of ply, but I'm not really using the MDF for anything, so I think this is going to be made from MDF, and then most of the stuff I had is 4mm MDF, so that's why I decided to use that. There was no other reason, just trying to use what I have around anyway. So this is the MDF, and that's a piece of ply which has a couple of holes in it, and I use it as a template. So these, I'm going to use these holes and screws as a hole down. So I'm just going to transfer those holes from the from the plywood over to the MDF, and that's what I'm going to use to screw it down onto the CNC bed. And now it is time to zero the Z-axis. So I'm just going to move the spindle into the middle of the workpiece. So I think that looks good. I take my Z stop. So this is just a known height, and you clip this one here, and then when the end mill touches this, it's going to send a signal to Mach 3 to stop it. And I've measured this, so there it has a known height. And if you look at this in tool setting, that's the signal. So I aligned the thing, and I click on tool setting, and it starts moving it down, and it will stop. It retracts the spindle and then sets the Z to 25 mil. So our Z is set, so all I need to do is move the spindle to the 0 position, which is there. And I just move, oops, and I just do this manually. I think that's about right. So this is sort of my 0 position there that I marked, and I just have to be, you know, roughly there because I designed all my drawings to be a few centimeters off this, so I definitely don't hit the screw with the spindle. But I think this is good enough for the X and the Y, and now I can use this to zero my X and Y coordinates. And my Z is just a few millimeters off the workpiece. So now we are all good, so we can load the file. And yeah, so I'm going to use number 1, regen the toolpath. So we are going to cut these parts out. So yeah, that looks about right. So I think we are ready. So all we need to do is we need to start the spindle controller. It takes a couple of seconds to load. Yeah, and we also need to start the pump. And I can check that it is pumping. And sometimes I also just pinch these, and I can hear the sound of the pump changing. And start the spindle. Sounds about right. And oops, that's it. Start a cycle. And it is done. First board out and the next board in. Technically, I don't think I should be doing this, but because I'm cutting through the material anyway, but let's just do the leveling again. Okay, it's done already. And I think I'm also going to check the zero as well. So I just moved it to zero on the keyboard, and let's see where it is. I would say that's close enough. So probably I shouldn't be doing this if I'm just doing you know, one sheet after the other. So we are ready for the next page. So number 2, and I always regenerate the toolpath. I don't know if it makes a difference. I don't even bother zeroing the extended Y. And now it's pump, VDF, VFD, start the spindle, spinning, and cycle start. Okay, so I have the 5 sheets cut, as you can see here, and if you see through, you can see the, where are these? Oh, just one second. Yeah, you can see the tabs there. So it holds, yeah. So it holds everything in place, so I can sand this whole sheet down just to get rid of these fine burrs which are on the cut side, and to some extent it's on the underside as well. So let me quickly do that. I just wanted to show how easy, well, how important it is to get these leveling right. So you can see this very fine thing. So even this is 4 mil MDF and I cut 4.5 mil. It just, I mean, it left probably like, I don't know, like, I mean, I can easily cut this, but probably there is some material still left in it. So it's either my bed is not level, or maybe there was something here. So when I cut the holes, there's some, you know, maybe there was debris on the spoil boards, which kept this one, this side up, because the rest of it looks good. But that should be the least of my worries. So now all I need to do is to free the parts from these tabs, and because these tabs are fairly small, I can just you know, cut it with a knife, especially in the MDF, and I can clean up these tabs later on. So as you can see, it cuts easily, but it still provides enough strength to hold the piece in the whole board when the CNC is cutting. So that's great. I have all the parts here, all of them are cleaned up, and after a well-deserved lunch, I need to tackle this puzzle problem, because it's been a couple of months since I did the drawing, and quite honestly, I don't remember how these things go together, and I'm too lazy to go and then look it up on my computer, so I think I'm just going to figure it out. So I'm really not sure what is going on, but things don't exactly line up. I mean, most of the things are fine, but then I'm pretty sure that these are the side pieces which go, well, that's the back wall, and that should align there, but you see those tabs are not aligned at all. But I designed the whole thing in 3D, so they should. I mean, they definitely did. And it definitely goes this way because that left side has no tabs and the other side has tabs because these smaller pieces should fit, and they do. So this is good. And that's the back piece. Yeah, that's fine as well. And then we have one in, which is a mirror. Yeah. And then, oops, it's like that. So that does match. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that, I mean, I don't remember how much clearance I left here, but so that is supposed to slide in there, but it's extremely tight fit. And I'm wondering if these MDF boards been around for a couple of years, so is it possible that they have swollen? So this is actually not 4 millimeters, but it is slightly more. And I don't have the rulers with me. So yeah, I think I need to do some filing or cutting, but because it's not going to be as easy. But yeah, I do have all the pieces, so everything should be fine. So CS is running a different job now, but done with the cab. Got all the bits glued together. Let's have a look. A couple of weeks has passed since the last video, and I glued everything together, and I also used some filler to fill out the gaps between all the panel joints and everything, so it looks, you know, reasonably even inside, and well, not so reasonable from the back side, but nobody's going to see that anyway, so I think that's going to be fine. And of course I have 2 cabs, so I should make another one as well. But thanks to modern technology I don't have to, because I bought these handy replicators from AliExpress, and it can just replicate anything that I need. So I just turn it on, and yeah, it just greets you, and then you just have to set it to channel 1, and then you put on the, you know, whatever you want to replicate, and then you turn on the second one as well, and then you just place it where you want the second object to be replicated to. And of course they have to be on the same channel, and I also had to do some calibration so it knows what is ground and what needs to be replicated, but then that should be all. And I have also measured this this cab, and it's 300 grams, so as per the documentation I should set up my power supply for the replication to 7.26 volts and 0.594 amps. So 7.26 volts and 0.594 amps, and that should be it. So all I need to do is turn on the power supply, and then it should replicate my object. That's pretty sweet if you ask me. So here I'm preparing the cab, and this is a fully 3D printed cab that I looked at pictures of the German Railways E71 electric locos, and I tried to copy those sort of controls and gauges that are available there, and I did the whole cab in two parts because otherwise it wouldn't fit into my 3D printer. So it was like 10 hours each side and then times two, so 40 hours of printing altogether for the two cabs. And here I'm just spraying on with filler, so just to hide the 3D printing details a little bit. I wasn't too concerned. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to watch it really close anyway. And then I added, well, finally I got a light gray paint because originally I did it on black and then I put it out on the sun to dry and it started warping. So I thought, let's just use a lighter shade of color. So if it gets, if it gets sunlight, then probably it's not going to absorb so much heat, and it's not going to be such an issue in the future. And the whole thing is just glued onto a piece of MDF that I would use to mount it in the cab. And once this is all done, it was time to fit it into the cab. And as you can see, what I mentioned at the beginning of the video is there is this rib inside, and I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this whole cab details assembly on top of this rib, and I'm just going to use some wood screw from the underside with some big washers to sort of like clamp it onto that piece of steel, and that's how it's going to be secured. I mean, the whole thing only weighs a couple of grams. Okay, 50 grams, so it doesn't have any weight, and I can very easily secure it to this rib inside the cab, or yeah, on the face of the cab. And as you can see, at this point it is fully painted. Well, the base coat is on, and of course I will decorate it later on. And I also have this small display. I think in German locomotives, maybe they use it to display the loco information, or maybe like the track plan or timetable. So that's like a separate piece that I'm going to mount it later on, but I just want to have a feel of, you know, how it fits, because also the side curves and everything. So I just wanted to make sure that everything fits, and yeah, and after that it was time to, you know, detail it and then do the final touches. And again, here, these are the various stages of the construction. So one of the cab is still black. That's the one that I originally painted like black. And the other one is already gray. And, well, sorry, that's the filler tank, which is also this grayish beige color. And I was just fitting in this computer screen. So I drilled holes in both of them, and I just used a piece of solid core wire just to add some additional strength, and just super glue the two pieces together. And finally, this is a time lapse of me painting both of the cabs. I could have spent a little bit more time on the details because I was doing a lot of freehanding, and I was painting some longer lines, which I could have masked just to get a much better result. But I'm still happy how they turned out. So I just used a few random different colors. So I think I used a blue for the screen, and then obviously like grays and blacks for the various dials and switches, maybe a little bit of silver as well for the hand controller or the throttle controller, and then the top of the knobs. And I also added a few, again, brass, well, not brass rod, but it's basically the single pieces from the single core wire for the brake handle. And I think there was one other details. I think there is one which more looks like the forward reverse switch. I didn't think it would make sense to 3D print that one, so I just created a stub, and then I just bent a piece of wire and I super glued in place. And then, yeah, as you can see, everything got painted, and I think the end result looks you know, rather good, rather nice. And then finally it was time to fit the windows. Actually, what you can see in the middle of the picture is that gray stuff on the door. So that's the door handle. So on the outside there is like a dummy imitation of a door handle and the lock and everything. And on the inside there is this piece which sort of goes to the frame, and there is a hole for a magnet inside. So there is no lock, there is no spring, there is no latch, nothing. It just, there is a magnet. So when it's shut, it sort of keeps it shut, and you need a little bit of force to get it open. But it won't open on the track just from the vibration of the loco. So I think that works fine. And then what you can see on the right hand side, that brownish thing with the white patches. So that's the cab, which I've already cut in half. So that's how it fits behind the door. And from this vantage point, you can see that it doesn't really reach all the way to the top. But yeah, as I said, I don't really care. So I cut all the windows on the CNC machine as well. So I used 2mm acrylic that I could buy in Obi. And yeah, I just cut them to size. And for this one, I had to trim because the hinge is right on top of the window opening. So I had to trim a couple of the corners just to make sure that it fits. And I used construction adhesive to add some glue on the edges, and I basically pressed it in from the inside, and I used some masking tape to keep this in place, and I removed the masking tape after a day or so. I mean, it was definitely tricky to put this one on because I did everything with obviously the loco assembled, so maybe it could have been easier if I just removed the whole top and I lifted it upside down, but it was still doable this way. And also I have a little bit more footage on the while fitting the front windows as well. And yeah, I mean, the process was all the same. I think for the front windows I left very little, I think probably like only 2 or 3 millimeters on the edges, so it was really difficult to get the windows in place so I don't get the adhesive you know, onto the visible part of the window, because it was fairly difficult to clean it up. But then I realized that this construction glue that I used is, if you just wait for a couple of minutes, then you can just sort of like peel it off, like when you can peel off like a silicone, that it sticks to the surface, but it is possible to get it off without leaving any residue. But anyway, I managed to do that, and it was a little bit difficult because now I had to reach in from the doors, which already had the windows in, but yeah, I can open the doors, so that was fine. And the doors are slightly smaller than the windows, the front windows itself, so it was like, yeah, less space to work with, but I managed to get in. The really tricky part was actually getting the side windows in, just above the plates between the grills, because that's a really, well, a small piece of glass, and it's difficult to get. I mean, I couldn't even get it from the inside, because that's where I have all the controls. So I ended up going inside, and I found the suction cup that you use in bathroom, like these towel hooks with a suction cup. So I added the adhesive, I put the suction cup in, I sort of like maneuvered it in, like, you know, inside the opening, and I managed to pull it by the suction cup, and I think I used a piece of wood just to apply a little bit of pressure from the inside, so I can, you know, just the glue can spread a little bit. Yeah, and so far it holds, so that was really difficult, and only for those 2 windows I probably should have removed the top, but yeah, again, I didn't. And I mean, that was it. I mean, I didn't film some of the other 3D printed details, so you can see the 2 silver plates already on, and I added a few more, these blue ones, which are not really visible unless you really look it up front. And if you follow me on Instagram, that you probably have seen that there are some other 3D printed decorative details on the boogie as well. So something that I wanted to cover the bearing block with some details that looks like the Excel journal on a real locomotive, but I haven't finished that because that required me drilling small holes into the bearing block and also tapping them with M3 threads. And I think I finished 1 or 2 bearing blocks, and I managed to break the tap into the hole. So then I stopped the whole thing because I had to get some new taps, and then I was just running out of time. So it has, these blocks is on, I think, 2 of the axles, but then it's missing from all the others. So I was like, yeah, at some point I will go back. And actually now I have the new taps. I bought 2 taps because I thought if I only have 1 tap, then I'm definitely going to break that. But if I have 2, I'm probably not going to break the first one because, you know, it's Murphy's Law that it's not going to stop me from continuing because I have another tap. So anyway, so at some point I will do that, and especially now the loco is inside the garage, I think it's going to be much easier to get to these lower details rather than like here when you have to kneel on the floor or like lie on the floor to get to the sort of like the boogie and some of the other small parts. But yeah, that's going to be the future. So this is all the footage that I had for this video, so I hope you enjoyed it, and that will be all for today. And thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.